Prior to any reform, in English and American law, political prisoners and high-ranking prisoners of war were occasionally incarcerated, but few common criminals could expect such treatment. Almost the only time commoners were locked away was while awaiting trial. This place of confinement, then, was properly speaking not a prison, but jail. The only offense for which long-term imprisonment was common was debt. Because of its contradictory nature, the United States began to abolish debtors' prisons. After the War of 1812, reformers from Boston and New York began a crusade to remove children from jails into juvenile detention centers. But the larger controversy continued over the purpose of prison. In 1821, a disaster occurred in Auburn prison that shocked even the governor into pardoning hardened criminals. After being locked down in solitary, many of the 80 men committed suicide and had mental breakdowns. Auburn reverted to a strict disciplinary approach. The champion of discipline and first national figure in prison reform was Lewis Dwight, founder of the Boston Prison Discipline Society. He spread the Auburn system throughout America's jails and added salvation and Sabbath school to further penitence. Finally, after many years, America achieved real reform. Idealism initiated the rise of a new generation including Francis Lieber and Samuel Gridley Howe and Dorothea Dix. Their goals were prison libraries, basic literacy, reduction of whipping and beating, commutation of sentences, and separation of women, children, and the sick. By 1835, America was considered to have two of the best prisons. Reformers from Europe looked to the new nation as a model for new building, utilizing and improving their own systems. Advocates for prisoners believed that the deviants could change and that a prison's stay could have a positive effect. It was a revolutionary idea in the beginning of the 19th century that society rather than individuals were responsible for criminal activity.
Before the 1800s, asylums were normally used to harm those with mental issues. They were more like prisons in the way they operated. Patients were treated like animals and chained to their cells, forced to sleep upright. It was only until Dorothy Dix visited many different mental hospitals and prisons to learn how cruelly the mentally ill were being treated. Despite how she reported this to the local court, her observations were ignored until she made them public, persuading many people to want to increase their efforts towards improving the conditions in the mental hospitals. Eventually, Dorothy was able to persuade the state legislature and gain support from many powerful influences. After this, the state hospital in Worcester, Massachusetts, which was still Maine at the time, was expanded to cater towards the mentally ill. Because of her reform, she was able to raise over $1 million and built many different mental institutions. She then moved to other states and expanded her reform. She gained the support of Horace Mann and Charles Sumner, and helped prison reforms and built schools for the blind. However, when the Civil War started, Dorothy Dix joined the Union Army as a nurse and quickly became the superintendent of female nurses. After the war, she returned to her reform and helped create over 30 mental hospitals around 1880. Dr. John M. Galt was a superintendent of the first official mental hospital, Eastern State Hospital, which was in Williamsburg, Virginia. In the past, mentally ill patients were plunged into cold water, shocked with electricity, and had their blood drawn as a way of treatment. However, at this hospital, Dr. Galt believed in moral treatment, which involved respect and compassion toward the patients. Of course, even with these reforms Dorothy encouraged, many mental hospitals still treated patients in a harmful way up until the 1900s.
Getting an education was not a top priority for most working-class individuals of the early 1800s. In fact, education was initially reserved for only the wealthy, with the males in the family being more likely to receive it. However, there were individuals like Caleb Bingham, an influential textbook author, Thomas Jefferson, and Benjamin Rush, who believed that education should be allotted to all children, especially bright young males. It wasn't until 1820 that a generation of educational reformers rose up and demanded that children be taught more than the 3 R's: reading, writing, and arithmetic. Of these people, the most influential was Horace Mann, who is accredited with fathering the movement. As Secretary of Massachusetts Education Board, he believed that education, which encompassed good morals and sound knowledge, should be for all children, no matter the financial background. So, he started small in his rural community by improving the school curriculum, lengthening the school year to 6 months, and most importantly, listening to the concerns of the citizens. Eventually, the success of his plan caused the other states to adopt it. However, education was not equal for everyone. African Americans had to go to separate schools, and women were taking baby steps toward their rights to education.